Good morning. It's Loren Lockman coming to you from the Tanglewood Wellness Center in Costa Rica. And we're going to be talking a little bit about this morning about hydration levels. And we're actually going to look at some hydration numbers for some of you that are here with me today. And we'll talk about what these things mean. So we were just talking about the fact that you're actually getting some numbness, which happens for you regularly, but it's happening now more often. Is that true? Okay. So let's start by looking at your numbers, because this could well be related to your level of hydration, although it could also not be related. Because, well, so there's a couple of factors here. And I won't have to mention your name because you already know I'm talking to you, so that might be just as well. Your body fat is 28%, 28.01%, which is fairly typical for the women we've seen here over the 10 years we've been measuring body fat. I just said a moment ago, 2% body fat is essential. So you need 2% to live. Now, please understand, I'm not suggesting you should be 2% body fat. That would be pretty scary. You've probably seen pictures of people walking out of concentration camps from World War II, things like that. You know, those people probably were at 2% body fat, the ones that survived, or just above that. That's not something you want to aspire to, unless you're anorexic. But I believe that a healthy female body should probably be somewhere between around 15 and 20% body fat. Okay, so at 28%, you're anywhere from 40 to 80% more than would be ideal for you, somewhere in that range. And the variation, you know, is going to happen depending on frame size. So people that have larger frames are naturally going to carry more body fat. I have a very, very small frame for a 6-foot-tall guy, and I'm going to carry very little body fat naturally, where other people my height have much bigger frames than I do. They're just naturally going to be larger than I am. But so your body fat's a little higher than it should be. Well, how does that play into this? You know, if we look at animals in nature, what's interesting is that animals in nature, a polar bear, for instance. Anyone here see the Planet Earth videos? Yeah. Amazing video series. The very first one was called Pole to Pole. Yeah. Do you remember? And it opens with a polar bear emerging from her den after 5 months underground with 2 cubs that she's birthed and has been breastfeeding for months while consuming nothing. No food, no water for 5 months. How does she go 5 months without consuming water? Well, polar bears have a lot of body fat because it gets kind of cold up there. Not as cold as where some of you live in Norway and Sweden and Finland, but kind of cold up at the North Pole. So they need this body fat to stay warm. And in the 5 months that she's been underground, her body has consumed roughly half of its own weight. Most of that's fat. When we break down fat, when we metabolize fat, we release ketones. We manufacture ketones, which the body can use to run on instead of glucose, except for the brain. We also manufacture as a byproduct, anybody want to guess? Water. One of the byproducts of breaking down fat is water. So animals in nature who start out properly hydrated because they live in their bodies, not their heads, and they're not eating dry garbage and things that are diuretics like alcohol, products that contain caffeine, including coffee, tea, and sodas. All these things force water. They're not using spices. All these things force water out of the body. Because they're only eating their natural high water content, perfect water content diets, they tend to be much better hydrated than most people. Then when they're fasting, whether it's because they choose to hibernate because there's nothing to eat in the wintertime, or they estivate in the summer because it's too hot and it's easier for them to just rest all summer and be dormant, or because they can't, you know, there's some other reason they can't find food, they're injured perhaps, or they're trying to cleanse or heal their body, whatever it might be. When they're not eating for long periods of time, they stay hydrated. I mean, like us, they've got food, they've got fuel because the body's living on fat. But they also don't have hydration issues because they started out well hydrated, and now as they break down body fat, they're manufacturing water. The problem for humans, we're manufacturing water as we break down fat too. But if you started out dehydrated and toxic, and your body needs a lot of water to move those toxins out of the body to cleanse, there's not going to be enough water available. And so even dry fasting proponents say, don't go more than a few days. Why not? Because you become dangerously dehydrated. It just doesn't work in the average human body. If we were fully hydrated and we weren't so toxic from all the garbage we do to ourselves, we could probably do it easily like other species do. Okay? So one of the things that happens is that people that have more body fat when they start the process are liberating more water than the average person. So your lean hydration was 72%, which is higher than most people here. But your body fat's also higher than most people here. So as your body starts breaking down body fat, it's going to be releasing more water than most people's do. So that could be partly why. Even when we're seeing numbers that are saying there's an issue, we often see that with people that have the most weight to lose, they've got the best hydration numbers throughout the process. That may not have been true if we'd measured you a week before the fast, or even 2 days before the fast. We didn't. We measured you 2 days after you started fasting. So it may not be as so accurate in terms of your starting hydration numbers. Okay? So there's a sense of what can happen on that end. If we look at, let's look at one of the leanest people here. Andreas, you're starting out at just over 5% body fat. And you have 70% lean hydration, which is, again, this is better than what we see average. The average we've seen here is right around 68%. Do you remember where yours was?
When I started?
Yep.
No.
Don't remember? Okay. So when we look at the numbers the scales give us, if you're using bioimpedance analysis, as we are, the scales numbers are going to reflect your body fat. Because there's almost no water in fat, which is how bioimpedance works, fat impedes the flow of electric current because it contains almost no water. So because you're 5% body fat, you would have had relatively high hydration numbers on the scale, right? I don't have those numbers in front of me, but the scale would have given you a high hydration number. We then take that number and we calculate the mass of your lean tissue, the mass of the water in your body, and we divide the mass of the water by the mass of the lean tissue to see what the percentage of your lean tissue is water. That's what we really want to know. What percentage of your lean tissue is water? Okay? So in your case, it's 70%. What we're doing is we're correcting for body fat by doing this. So your numbers would have probably been the highest here on the scale, but and the scale, that's what they go by. That's what most people go by, is just that number. And they, the scale has, if you look at the computer screen, there's a bar chart that says for a man, I forget how old you are, for a 21-year-old man, here's the range, and yours was probably excellent for hydration. But that's because your body fat's so low, much lower than most people. We need to correct for that to see how does your actual lean hydration numbers look. So what I've seen is that lean tissue can be up to about 80% water. Okay? Now, no one here's got lean tissue of 80% water. No one that we've measured in the last couple of days. Mine's just under 80%. It's usually around 79%, or a little bit better than that. And we've never seen anybody higher than that, so I'm only guessing what's possible. I don't really know. I doubt it goes too much higher than that. But the result of having your lean tissue as well hydrated as possible is we're not taking water away from those non-vital areas, as we discussed the other day. Right? If you've got all the water in the body your body needs, then your heart, brain, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, thyroid, and bloodstream have all they need, and they're not having to take it from your skin discs, eyes, and joints, which are the primary places we lose water from. And the primary things that wind up degrading as we get older, which we think of as aging. Aside from hair color and loss of hair, which as far as I can tell have nothing to do with hydration and are largely genetically programmed, all those other things are primarily based on dehydration, chronic dehydration. So I think it's fair to say that my skin, joints, eyes, and discs are all much healthier than the average 54-year-old. That's because of my hydration. Okay? So most people we see are around 68% lean tissue hydration. That means they're about 15% lower than they could be, or at least it means they're about 15% lower than me. As we see people's hydration numbers go up, we see amazing things happen. Now again, because I'm sitting in a room full of people almost exclusively in their 20s, which is unusual for us, by the way. Our average, this is also a phenomena, I think, because of YouTube. I think more younger people watch YouTube than older people. Up until the last year, our average client was around 55. We don't have anyone here over 35 right now. We will later on in the session. We've got other people coming. But this is a bit unusual. But you know, again, that's a YouTube phenomenon, I believe. So because you guys are all mostly 20s, a couple of you, I think one of you is 29, almost 30, and one is in the 30s, we aren't going to see people here with wrinkles on their face. We're not going to see people here with a lot of joint problems or disc issues. Most of you probably are as tall today as you were when you were 18. Most 54-year-olds aren't as tall as they were when they were 18, and very few 64-year-olds, and almost no 74-year-olds. Why? You have some disc issues. Yeah. Have you shrunk a little bit, or have you always had disc issues?
Maybe, but no, I didn't always have.
Okay, so one of the things that there are various things that can happen with discs, but what happens to people as they age, and the reason people lose height as they age, excuse me, is because the discs are essentially bags of water. And because the body is short on water, we're taking water from the discs, as well as the eyes, which are also mostly water, and the joints, which connective tissue that allows the joints to move, mostly water. Okay? Blood, so all these things, mostly water, as we're taking water away from them, these things begin to degrade. People shrink, they have joint problems, they have vision problems. This is all primarily chronic dehydration. So do not expect to see any significant change in your hydration level while you're fasting, even though you're probably drinking more water than you ever have before. Why not? Why won't you see any significant change? Because your body's going to be employing this water to cleanse and heal. In order to eliminate the stuff the body's trying to eliminate, it's going to need the water that's in your system, okay, that you're taking in. So you're not going to see a significant change in hydration while you're fasting. But if we measure your hydration numbers, and talking to Naomi, who's now been here for more than 2 months, right? You spent 4 weeks here plus 6 weeks closed. So this is your 11th week here. And my guess is we're going to see a reasonably significant improvement in your hydration from when you got here. Because you finished your fast and refeeding, and now you've been eating optimally for almost 7 weeks since ending your refeeding process. We should see some improvement. Now, the only thing that might have some impact on that is the degree to which you're still detoxifying. And you're still detoxifying, right? We know that. We can see that happening. So to the degree, to the extent that someone gets most of that work done during their process here, as soon as they're done that process, like in the 6-week refeeding, the 6-week period after leaving here, most of you are going to see a significant improvement in your hydration level. You may or may not have a way to measure that. but if we could measure it, we would see it. You might feel it. You might notice it in subtle ways, and it will be relatively subtle for most of you guys because you're mostly in your 20s. Okay? Had you, if you were coming in here at 65 or 70, you would see huge shifts